Had to be in transportation for a few minutes there. So for today's agenda, we have the minutes to approve, and then also consideration on House Bill 2101 and 2240. So to begin, I think Gary emailed out the minutes for February 4th and February 6th. Any comments on the minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved as drafted. And then we'll move on then to House Bill 2101. So we'll bring it up for discussion, but before that, ask the revisers to give a quick overview of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2101 would adopt a new section of law that prohibits a county or city from adopting an ordinance or resolution establishing or providing for the operation of a guaranteed income program, which would be defined as a program providing individuals with a regular periodic cash payment to be used for any purpose without requiring the individuals to be employed, seek employment, or attend employment-related training to receive funds.
Okay, thank you, committee. Any questions for the reviser? Any discussion or amendments on the bill? Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. If I understand the reading of the bill correctly, it says is provided that there would be no training. There's no stipulations on what that training might be, so therefore that training could simply be something along the lines of logging into an internet web page and answering a few questions as to your name, possibly what you've done in the past, and what you might be willing to do in the future, or something in short nature like that. But that would then be construed as training if presented in that fashion. Am I correct?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Employment-related training is not defined in the bill, so it would be up to the city or municipality or a party challenging one of these programs appealed or challenged in a court to decide.
Thank you very much for that explanation. And thank you, Mr. Chair, for indulging.
Okay, committee, any further discussion or amendments for House Bill 2101? So seeing none, anything, committee, is there a motion on House Bill 2101? Representative Barth.
Chairman Auerkamp, I move that we pass HB 2101 favorably out of committee.
We have a motion. We also have a second by Representative Pickert. We need a discussion on the motion. Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And looking back at the agenda from that, there was one out-of-town via WebEx proponent and 3 in-person local proponents, including the Kansas Association of Counties, the Kansas League of Municipalities, and Kansas Action for Children. I think this is a solution in search of a problem, and I will not be supporting this bill. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion on the bill? Representative Roser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Out of the request for our local county, I also will have to vote no on this.
Any further discussion on the bill, on the motion? Seeing none, Representative Barth, would you like to close, or?
I just wanted to offer comment when appropriate.
Sure, now's good.
So I know that when we had this hearing and when we were in committee here learning about this, we heard that this just doesn't exist anywhere in Kansas. Why are we doing this? And I don't know about you, but I prefer to be able to give my money to those folks that are in need and not be told and have our money taken in a way that is a universal benefit and payment. And this is happening already in Kansas. It's in my district right now. Douglas County, Lawrence, Kansas is already meeting. There are multiple websites and pages where they have been posting about these screenings and panels. So there is a reason for us to address this issue now, or else your taxpayer dollars are not going to be your taxpayer dollars going forward. This is much needed for us to not allow something that could go in the very wrong direction of our taxpayer dollars. We're here this session to provide tax relief to folks so that we are not further impacting those who are hurting and need to have more income in their pocketbooks. So I'm in full support of us passing this bill. Thanks.
Welcome, Representative Woodard. So we're in kind of the process of working House Bill 2101, and there's been a motion, a second, and we're under discussion on the motion of the bill. All right, very good. Representative Simmons.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are two reasons I can't support this bill. The first reason being, I think it's another example of the state legislature trying to tell local communities how to do things. We have local elections, and I think that if local politicians do something that their constituents don't like, we should trust the constituents to express that at the appropriate time, not under duress from the state legislature. My second reason that I will not be supporting this bill is I don't think that exploring a concept through such things like a documentary screening warrant legislative action. I mean, I think that's a really slippery slope. I mean, it makes me think very much of 1984. We should not be criminalizing thought. Thank you.
Representative Esau, and good reference there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I recalled seeing something briefly in the news about it, and sure enough, a Google search brought up what they're doing in Douglas County, which confirms what previous representatives said about their exploring the idea and watching a video, et cetera. And one of the links is even K-State Research and Extension in Douglas County supporting it and having the conversation about it in cooperation with the library. So our tax dollars are being used through that service to consider this. So for that reason, I agree that it's not a problem in search of, or sorry, not a solution in search of a problem. If this is a concern, it is being considered in Kansas, and this is how they quietly work their way towards it. So if you oppose the concept, then you would definitely want to support this bill because it's already beginning here.
Representative Carr.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I believe it's a slippery slope when we start believing that we can somehow omnisciently dictate what someone's intent is, unless that intent is clearly stated. Additionally, I think from my previous statement, it's very clear that the depth of this bill, even if it was what the intent was, even if I believe what the proponents say about the bill, it's so easy to get around. And the get around statement then again falls right back on the local municipalities And if the local municipalities are in an effort trying to do this, then we are simply interfering with what it is that they have decided to do, that their constituents have voted them in office to make these decisions for them. And again, this is no more than government overreach. And with that, this even includes private individuals. So this would mean that someone who had decided to use their own money, even if it was just for research purposes or test purposes, to find out something later, as we've heard some of my colleagues state that they know what the intent is. I don't pretend that I know the intent. But if these are private funds, then who are us as a state governmental body to tell someone else how they should spend their money? Thank you.
Representative Roser?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to elaborate on my vote. This bill appears to undermine local autonomy and local authority. And as somebody who supports the County Home Rule Act, which basically provides that county commissions can transact all county business and perform all powers of local legislation, I campaigned on the promise that I would support local government, and then I also campaigned on and wanted to follow through on that belief that I would not infringe on voters' ability to be informed and elect good officials in their local areas. I want to do my best to support Riley County, and I want to do my best to support the city of Manhattan and their positioning. So even if I personally don't agree with universal income programs, and I don't, I do support my ability to be an accurate reflection of the district, and that is why I'm voting against this bill.
We need any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Barth, you may close.
I think universal income goes down the path of really harming individual liberties. We already have our Constitution in place that allows every single one of us to be able to give funds to whoever we want and deem want. We already have that right to do so. And I encourage everyone who supports this that they can already give part of your paycheck to folks that are needing money. We all have that right. This is actually not just a concept. It's not just a screening. There actually is a Douglas County Community Health Improvement Plan. It's in their formal 2024-2029 plan, where it specifically does state this type of program to target, and it does exactly what we need to do. This is not a local government control type of thing, because I too believe in local control. This is an action of theft of taxpayer dollars in an unsubstantiated way. So I close. Thanks.
Committee, we have a motion and a second to pass out House Bill 2101 favorably. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The bill is passed out of committee. Moving on, we'll move on to House Bill 2240. And House Bill 2240 asks the revisor to give a quick explanation of the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. House Bill 2240 would require the legislature to approve any state agency who is seeking or implementing a Medicaid state plan amendment, state demonstration, or waiver. And the legislature would have to consent to do so by legislative action.
Any questions for the revisor? Seeing none, open up for discussion and amendments on the bill. I will offer Representative Humphreys.
You can go first. I have an amendment. But if you, it doesn't matter to me what order. I don't know if other people have amendments. I just.
No, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I have an amendment. Do we have the amendments printed or not? It's the one about the LCC. So would you like me to explain it while she's passing it up, or wait?
If you could wait, I think that might be a little bit easier. Thank you.
Thank you. There you go.
Okay, Representative Humphreys, would you like to explain your amendment?
Yes.
Please.
During,
I think if she has a chance to explain the amendment first, and then we'll ask for a second.
yep. So during, when we were hearing the bill, during the testimony, there was some concern that what would happen if the legislature were not in session. And so this amendment simply says when the legislature is not in session, that the Legislative Coordinating Council may be the ones to authorize a change. So it's just taking care of that issue when the legislature is not in session.
Any questions on that specifically, or any clarifications on the amendment? But before that, let's go ahead and ask for a second. Do we have a second? We have a second from Representative Riley. So questions on the amendment, Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A question for the carryover of the amendment. I don't notice a time frame, a timetable, or a date with respect to when the Legislative Coordinating Council would get an opportunity to hear this or make a ruling. I wonder if that was something that was overlooked, or I'm going to need to have a little more detail with respect to that. Not in session. Well, I know not in session, but not in session is 9 months of the year.
Yeah. So, I mean, the underlying bill also doesn't say like how, like a time frame as far as when the legislature would have to do this. And this just adds when we're not in session, the Legislative Coordinating Council can stand in for the legislature during those 8 or 9 months. And it also, it doesn't give them like a time frame, like you have to do this within whatever time. Instead, they can do it when they feel like they need to do it. The LCC meets regularly when we're not in session, and there's other times that they fill in for the legislature and make decisions for the legislature. I don't have a list of all those times when they, you know, all the different statutes where they do fill in, but it's a pretty common thing when we have something that when we're not in session, then they can act in lieu of the legislature.
Possibly to clarify the work of the LCC, I'll ask Jenna with the revisor's office to give a quick couple talking points about the LCC and how they meet and what they're able to do when we're not in session.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the Legislative Coordinating Council is made up of 8 members of the legislature, and that would be the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, the Vice President of the Senate, the Speaker Pro Tem of the House, the Majority Leader of the House and the Senate, the Minority Leader of the Senate, and the Minority Leader of the House of Representatives. A quorum would be 5 members would be required to have a vote, and they meet at least once each month in the interim between legislative sessions, either on call of the chairperson or 3 members of the council. And the statute mentioned in this amendment, KSA 46-1202, does give the LCC the authority to, it says, govern the mechanics and procedure of all legislative committee work, and it has the whole list of all the different things that they can make decisions upon. And if we're looking to areas in which the LCC can make decisions, probably the most memorable one in the last few years would be amendments to KEMA, which is Chapter 48, the Kansas Emergency Management Statutes. And that would be in probably KSA 48925, I believe, which related to the governor's authority to issue executive orders. And a lot of those powers to overturn or amend executive orders and things you may be closing down or having the shutdowns in 2020 were amended to require oversight by the LCC.
Okay, committee, so we're on the Humphreys amendment. Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Owsley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I appreciate the bringing of the amendment, and I think the intent of the amendment, and I agree, handing over authority for the legislative branch to the LCC, to the 8 members of that is a common thing. And sometimes I think it's too common, and we are an elected body, and I think sometimes we ought to retain that within our power here while we're in session. This is already handled, but I'll wait till we get back on the bill. Thank you.
Committee, any further discussion, questions on the Humphreys amendment? Seeing none, Representative Humphreys, you may close.
Okay, thank you. I will just add that the way that the bill is written, it's a state agency seeks the implementation of a change. And so if they're not comfortable with the LCC, they can wait to ask to make the change until the full legislature would be in session. But if it was something urgent that needed to be done, then the LCC could stand in for the legislature. And that's why it's important. And I appreciate that being mentioned during the hearing that we did need to make this change. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I move my amendment. Close on my amendment.
So committee, we have a motion and a second by Representative Humphreys to amend the bill. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. No. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. The bill is amended. So back on discussion. Any discussion, amendments on the bill? Representative Esau.
Mr. Chair, I also have an amendment, but I don't know if my amendment should go next, so, okay.
Okay. So Representative, yeah, if you'd like to explain it or if you'd like to revise it, whichever you prefer. Jenna, would you like to briefly go over the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this would add just a few paragraph designations to make it make sense. The lead-in language would be on or after July 1, no state agency shall seek or implement. Then the 1A would be the state waiver. And then this would add a new 2. So it would say no state agency shall seek or implement any changes to funding structures, day services, or targeted case management services for persons with intellectual or developmental disabilities unless the legislature expressly consents and approves of these changes by an act of the legislature. And I believe this is language asked for by some of the IDD representatives.
And that was a very good description, and why I brought the amendment because of those concerns. For example, I have an email from a constituent he's not 100% opposed to considering changes or improvements, but they're very concerned that they had no input, that there's changes coming that are going to impact the people that they are caring for on a long-term basis, and it has that community very, very concerned. I've had numerous emails. I know a couple of other committee members have also had some emails, and I've talked to people. They've had emails. I went to a lunch that was put on by the agency, and my concerns weren't really alleviated. I think that it is being somewhat rushed. And this is, from the perspective of I see it, they're turning to us and saying, hey, this agency's doing this, can you act? And I think this is how the legislature can act to make sure that we give them time to have their input. It doesn't mean changes won't happen. It just means that the legislature would look at it first before those changes do happen so that they can have their voices heard.
Okay. Committee, we have a motion to amend by Representative Esau. Do we have a second? We have a second. Representative Riley, seconds. Motion to amend. Any discussion, questions on the Esau amendment? Representative Pickard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I echo the previous representative's comments. I've attended some meetings in Wichita with constituents, parents of IDD folks themselves, caregivers, administrators, and they're just kind of in a panic mode right now. Too many changes too fast, and somebody's going to slip through the cracks. A lot of people will slip through the cracks. So I think this is a prudent way to deal with this.
Representative Roser.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the 11th, so earlier this week, we heard, well, not really heard, we had 4 written-only proponents of this bill with a suggestion for the amendment from Big Lakes, who is from the Manhattan area. And so for that, I very, very much support this amendment. Thank you, Representative.
Any further discussion on the Esau amendment? Representative Owsley.
Thank you. And again, I appreciate the intent, but looking at the opponents, we got the Kansas Department of Health, we've got Douglas County Lawrence Public Health Executive Director, we've got the Director for the Johns County Department of Health, and I may stray off the amendment here in just a bit, but I think it's relative that when we were having this hearing, I felt like this bill was in the wrong committee. I felt like it belonged in the Health Committee and not here in Welfare Reform. I didn't feel like I had enough knowledge and background upon the entire contents of the bill and the nuts and bolts of it. It's a huge, complex situation, and I know that this change is only a paragraph, and I hope it does address some of the concerns brought to us by the proponents. And this was one where I felt like every proponent probably should have been a neutral, most proponents, and that they all came with suggestions. So I appreciate the effort to address concerns raised to us with the original language of the bill. But I'm going to stand by my original feeling and say this is above our pay grade. This belongs in a different committee with more information. And to tie it back to the LCC, if those decisions are made by 8 legislators, we're still a citizen legislature, and our individual experiences and occupational backgrounds adds to our joint decision making. So I'll remain neutral on the amendment. I didn't vote on the last one. I won't vote on this one, and I'll probably still vote for the bill afterwards, though I appreciate the intent to make it better.
Committee, any further discussion, questions on the Esau amendment? Seeing none, Representative Esau, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I understand the comments of the concern about, are we handing too much power to the LCC during the off session for oversight of things? We do authorize them to do those things, but I think we can also speak to them and speak up. And we don't want to have a delay when there's a short time when they're having to address whether or not, sorry, I got too close to the mic, whether or not they should make a change because they're trying to meet what the federal standards are. So I think that's an appropriate way to handle it during the time that we are not in session. I've rapidly become much more knowledgeable about this issue and what's going on with it. So I think the LCC is capable of doing that as well. And with that, I would move my amendment.
We have a motion by Representative Esau to amend. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion to amend passes, and the bill is amended. We're back on discussion and amendments on the bill. Any further discussion or amendments on the bill? Seeing none, committee will ask, is there a motion with regards to House Bill 2240? Representative Burkamp.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we pass out House Bill 2240 favorably for passage as amended.
Motion by Representative Burkamp and a second by Representative Roser to pass out House Bill 2240 as amended favorably. Any discussion on the motion or further discussion on the bill, committee? Seeing none, Representative Burkamp, you may close.
I close.
We have a motion and a second to pass the bill out as amended favorably. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Representative Simmons asked for her no vote to be recorded. Thank you. And the bill passes out as amended favorably. So one moment. Yeah, just a recorded no for Representative Simmons. All right, committee, that concludes our work for the day. Please note the agenda, the note from Gary. Gary, you wanna expound on that note? Seems like a lot of postage. So if you like your packets, take them with you. So with that, committee, thank you very much for your work. Next week's turnaround will be on the floor Tuesday, so no meetings until the following week. Just to help you prepare for the following week, the week after turnaround, we will have a committee meeting on that Tuesday, but on the Thursday, I'm going to offer that meeting time to Representative Howerton, which many of you are on her committee, the Child Welfare Committee. And so we will not have our welfare reform meeting the Thursday after turnaround. So that's, I believe, 2 weeks from today. But we will meet that Tuesday.